Oh my God. Bakhram Murtazaliev or Murtazaliev just stopped Tszyu in the third round. Look, for anybody who thought that this is what was going to take place, just know that odds-wise, Tszyu in some books was like a greater than 7-1 favorite, and Murtazaliev was like a plus 450, like a 4.5-1 underdog. I was not expecting this. In fact, I couched my preview video in the context of, does Murtazaliev have a good chance at beating Tszyu? And my answer was no. So, I mean, not only did I pick Tszyu to win, and I did pick him by stoppage, but given the styles and given the way I thought I saw Murtazaliev hurt to the body against Jack Culke in the fight that Murtazaliev won this IBF 154-pound title, I thought that that was like a firefight. I mean, they were both just launching right hands, and Murtazaliev was just throwing a bunch of winging right hands and sweeping left hooks. And, you know, it was just, he was using his jab just as a tap to throw big punches, but not as a pummeling, popping jab. I just thought that he engaged in way too much of a firefight with Jack Culke, who was also catching him a lot. Like, there were a couple times in that Murtazaliev-Culke fight that I thought Culke might be on his way to stopping Murtazaliev. Yes, Murtazaliev ended up winning that one via 11th round TKO, but I wasn't seeing enough in Murtazaliev to think that he had the boxing IQ, really, to beat Tszyu. You know, Tszyu's fought, you know, Tony Harrison, Sebastian Fundora, Brian Mendoza, and aging Jeff Horn. Like, Tszyu at this point has been in with some top-notch fighters, and he conducted himself with this patient hunting style where he was very economical in his movement. He knew how to purposefully put his punches together in a way where he was wasting nothing. So I thought that Tszyu, even if he had some issues early on with Murtazaliev's, you know, reach advantage, his height advantage, and his propensity to throw a lot of power shots, I thought that Tszyu would almost certainly weather the storm and start walking Murtazaliev down and beating him to the body specifically, but walking him down and eventually taking advantage of Murtazaliev's high volume power punching. But no, like, that did not happen at all. What happened was, very early in this fight, it was evident that Murtazaliev had a significant hand speed advantage. So at this point, not only do you have a significant height advantage and reach advantage, but you're also quicker to pull the trigger. So there was the hand speed advantage, but there also seemed to be a timing advantage where Tszyu, who had to kind of come in and was throwing bombs himself, like Tszyu, it wasn't for a lack of trying, wasn't for a lack of heart. Tszyu pretty much put it all on the line. But even before Murtazaliev badly hurt and dropped Tszyu with that left hook, I thought that Murtazaliev was just getting off a lot quicker, where Tszyu's feet didn't seem like they were where they needed to be for him to be in range and for him to beat Murtazaliev to the punch. And if not beat him to the punch, at least absorb or roll with one shot and then give your return fire. No, at worst, Murtazaliev was matching Tszyu in effective power punching, and at best, he was beating him to the punch in a lot of those exchanges where Tszyu looked like he was a step behind. And there was this moment where there was like a bit of a head clash where Tszyu started kind of pawing at his own top of the head, where I was thinking, oh no, not again. Is this 2 consecutive Tszyu fights where he gets a bad cut to the top of the head, not to the forehead, but to the top of the head? Because that's where he was pointing to again. I wasn't sure if the same cut reopened, but he seemed like it didn't cause him at least to bleed. I don't know if it bothered him beyond that point, but he wasn't bleeding. It's the end of the first round. They open up the second round, and pretty early on in that second round, it looked like Murtazaliev was beating Tszyu to the punch again. Yes, every now and then Tszyu would blast Murtazaliev with something big, but Murtazaliev, look, he was just outlanding him with the harder, cleaner shots, and Tszyu got dropped mid-exchange by a big left hook. Like, Tszyu was coming in, and it was almost like he was basically playing Russian roulette with the guy. Like, they would both pull the trigger at the same time, and whatever happens, happens. And yeah, that happened to Tszyu. He got put on his back by a left hook. Yes, he did get up. He beat the count. He got dropped 2 more times in that round. And yes, between those knockdowns, he was basically setting his feet and firing big shots, like he only had a puncher's chance beyond that point because his legs clearly weren't right. Then he got dropped again by a right hand, but it looked like he got dropped at the end of an exchange where there was just one more punch to punctuate the exchange, caught him cleanly on the chin. It wasn't the hardest shot, but Tim Tszyu's guard was down by that point in the exchange. He got dropped on his back that time. He kind of rolls over, eventually he gets back up. The ref is checking with him. He doesn't seem okay, but he's okay enough where you don't have to stop the fight. Like, they would have been well within the right to stop the fight after that second knockdown. He gets knocked down a third time in the round, makes it out of the round barely. When they open up the third round, the ref brings Tim Tszyu over to the fight doctor, and the fight doctor looks at him, just kind of checks his eyes, and has him tracing the movement of his finger. Basically what they were doing for Deontay Wilder when he was badly hurt against Luis Ortiz in their first fight, a fight that Deontay Wilder ended up winning via stoppage. But remember when they extended the in-between round break by waiting till the end of the round, then bringing Deontay Wilder over to look at the doctor? That's what they did for Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu passed the doctor's exam or whatever. They allow the fight to continue, and then not too far into the third round, Tim Tszyu gets dropped badly again, beats the count again, and then Tim Tszyu is basically just setting his feet. He can't move anymore. He could hardly move his legs, and he's just firing shots, eating shots, and you just know. And the ref said this when he allowed the fight to continue after that, I believe, fourth knockdown. He said to Tim Tszyu, hey, one more, either one more knockdown or one more big shot, I'm stopping the fight. So Tim Tszyu eats another couple punches, doesn't go down, but you know that it's only a matter of time before he gets his lights put out. That's the energy that this fight took, and that's the tone that this fight took. And you see the ref, as Tim Tszyu's kind of getting beat on, he's just one more big shot away from jumping in, and then you see the towel just come flying in. Fight's over. Third round TKO win for Murtazaliev. Boy, this was unexpected. And this, by the way, was the first non-pay-per-view Amazon Prime fight for the PBC promotion. So we've been waiting for like several months. When are they gonna like actually have a non-pay-per-view fight on Prime? Well, this was the first. And I'm gonna think about it before I really give my initial thoughts. Well, I could give a thought or two. It seemed like the arena was small, first of all. So this looked like it was a casino, a small casino setting type of fight. Like, I was chatting with some of my family and friends in this chat group. It's called Riyadh Season. We change the name every now and then, but it's a boxing chat room. And my cousin Benji Tucker, some of you guys see him in my live chats, but he basically said it looked like they cleared out a Dave & Buster's for this fight. It didn't look like it was a fight of a high magnitude, which was surprising given Tim Tszyu's pedigree, right, and his career to this point. But man, this was not what I expected. And this was like the first fight in several years that Tszyu, Tim Tszyu's Hall of Fame dad, attended. So it was an emotional moment either yesterday or the day before when Tszyu surprised his son, Tim Tszyu, and showed up to his fight. You know, Tszyu's been living in Russia for like the past few years. Tszyu is, you know, Russian, Mongolian, but by way of Australia, right? So yeah, Tszyu attends the fight that his son gets knocked out. You want to talk about bad timing. And, you know, when Tim Tszyu lost to Sebastian Fundora, I almost looked at that as being perhaps a moral victory because, yes, he did lose his title. And yes, the corner should have called the fight because of the blood due to the inadvertent elbow in that Fundora fight. And, you know, Tim Tszyu would have been able to walk away with a no contest, would have been able to retain the title. But they let the fight continue, so then it's too late to stop it because then they go to the scorecards and Tim Tszyu ends up losing a decision. But the way that he kind of gutted through that fight while his face was just a bloody mask, right? And he was persevering through it. He never got dropped in that fight. And he basically fought a competitive decision loss against Sebastian Fundora. So no, it wasn't fortuitous in the sense that he lost the fight. Tim Tszyu lost the fight. But because he didn't give up and because he went all the way to a decision, I thought that he actually gained a lot from that. But now I'm not so sure. Like, I don't know if what happened today was any byproduct of what happened in that Tim Tszyu Fundora fight. I tend to just think that this was a bad matchup at the end of the day for Tim Tszyu. Remember, Tim Tszyu has been dropped twice before, once not too long ago by Terrell Goucher in the early rounds in Tim Tszyu's US debut. So maybe it was just that Tim Tszyu style of walking his man down is met with resistance if the guy is taller, longer, quicker hands, and can pull the trigger on big power punches, as Tim Tszyu is conducting his patient hunting style. Maybe this was just a bad matchup, but yo, if that first loss, the one to Sebastian Fundora, didn't do something to really harm Tim Tszyu's career, this fight almost certainly does. Like, this was a fight where I'm not sure what Tim Tszyu's chin is going to be like in the wake of this one. Like, Tim Tszyu, I looked at as being, aside from maybe Terrence Crawford, maybe the best fighter in the division, including over the guy who just beat him, Fundora. Like, I thought Tim Tszyu was on his way to beating Fundora if it wasn't for that inadvertent elbow causing that terrible gash. I looked at Tim Tszyu because of what he had done in 2022 and 2023 as being like the class of the division. Like, when they had announced Tim Tszyu versus Virgil Ortiz Jr., I was thinking, damn, maybe this is too much too soon for Virgil at 154 to make your 154 debut against Tim Tszyu. Yeah, I didn't love that I loved the matchup, but I was probably going to pick Tim Tszyu to beat Virgil Ortiz in that one, because Virgil Ortiz, I had seen, he should have been dropped against Mean Machine Kavaliauskas. And yes, he eventually got dropped in the fight that they ended up making for Virgil Ortiz against Bohachuk. Virgil Ortiz got dropped multiple times, but won via close fight of the year contender, disputed decision, right? But outside of Terrence Crawford, and yes, Madrimov fought Crawford very well, but I still looked at Tim Tszyu as being a top 2, top 3 guy in the division. Now, after this fight, I don't know if he's a top 5, top 6 guy. I don't know what he's going to look like in the fights to follow, because this was a bad 3-round beating. He got dropped like 4 times. Yes, he did have the heart and the guts to keep on getting up, but this was a bad beatdown, resulting in a lot of knockdowns to where, again, the guy could barely move his feet by the time this one was over. So yeah, this was a horrible loss for Tim Tszyu. This was a really, really bad loss. I'm trying to think of a similar type of loss given where these guys' reputations were, because it was as shocking as it was bad. Because again, I did not expect this to happen. Let me know if you thought that Murtazaliev was gonna win this fight. I did not, but he did emphatically with the 3rd round TKO. But let me know your thoughts. I almost don't know what to make of this 154 division at this point, because Terrence Crawford, I don't think is interested in really competing with these other guys at 154. I think it's kind of Canelo or bust for Terrence Crawford, like Canelo or maybe even retirement, unless there's something like totally out of nowhere, like Teofimo Lopez or Ryan Garcia wanting to move all the way up to fight Terrence Crawford. Maybe something like that, where Terrence Crawford fights one of these smaller guys with big names and makes a lot of money there. Otherwise, I really think that it's just Canelo Alvarez. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think Terrence Crawford is going to be fighting these other top 10 guys. Errol Spence, I think that this might be it. If he beats Fundora, okay, he won a fight in another division. Maybe he retires after that. And if Errol Spence loses to Fundora in his, in Spence's 154 debut, then Errol Spence is probably done or near done at that point. So Crawford and Spence, I don't look at as being active participants in the division. Yes, Spence will be challenging for Fundora's 2 titles, but I don't expect Crawford and Spence to be at 154 very long. And then you've got Madrimov, Fundora, Virgil Ortiz, Tim Tszyu, who just sustained this terrible 3rd round knockout loss, Bohachuk, Jesus Ramos, Erickson Lubin, Brian Mendoza. Now you've got the IBF champ Murtazaliev, who's now defended his title successfully against Tim Tszyu. You got Charles Conwell. So it's a popping division. I just think it's right now, it's kind of anyone's guess. Like, who would you pick between Virgil Ortiz and Jesus Ramos? I don't know. And then they just made, I believe, Madrimov versus Bohachuk. That's going to be interesting. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.